And welcome back to another really live Green Rush program, the Business of Cannabis talk show every Friday afternoon here on the Pro Cannabis Media Network. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media and also the host of In the Weeds, my regularly scheduled podcast that gets released every week or so. We also have an old friend joining us now in this next half hour, maybe even two old friends. When I first started this program, I needed somebody who actually knew more about business, any business, than me, which is not difficult, really, when you get right down to it. And I thought of my old friend, David Rabinovitz, and he is with us now in the Zoom room and on Green Rush. David, I'm glad you got the memo about the hats.
Thank you, Jimmy. Actually, I didn't get the memo, but I watched the first part of the show and I took off for 5 minutes to say, where's that damn hat?
There you go. And I'm glad you found it. You're joined by Rick Thompson from Michigan and Josh Kincaid in Washington and Doug Miller in New Jersey. David, if you have been watching, you know we've been talking about the biggest news stories in cannabis this year. Is it that court case, that federal court ruling that you think is the biggest because it could open up interstate commerce?
No.
Okay, which one do you think it is?
It's the new court case. It's the one out of Oregon, Jefferson Packing House. Jefferson, when the case I was so excited about earlier this year was the one coming out of Maine, right? And I wrote the article that was on cannabis.net about how I see interstate commerce unfolding and that it would unfold in the courts. And you recall, I was eviscerated for that position back in April by a few folks who may remain unnamed right now. But as things have unfolded, the case went the way I predicted it would go in August. And then New York had an issue where a federal judge issued an injunction saying the dormant commerce clause applies to cannabis. And as I stated back in April, the way I saw it unfolding is some operator in some state would sue their regulator. And sure enough, in November, Jefferson Packing House sued the state of Oregon. I think that's one of the two biggest stories of the year. And the other big story, I think, is that the top 10 MSOs owe $507 million in back taxes. And if they paid it, only one of them could survive more than 10 months. That just shows you how fragile the industry is and how the really big players are standing on real thin legs right now.
Oh boy. So how's this 2023 prediction looking for you, Josh and Doug, as you guys look at the numbers? David, I know, looks at numbers all the time. Is interstate commerce really the key to success for this industry? Josh, I'll ask you that first.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the lack of redundancies that you would have to have in the industry, especially for beverages, is going to make or break a lot of these companies. So having a regional facility where you grow in California and then you have a distribution company in Ohio or whatever is kind of the way that traditionally it works. Otherwise, you're just a local business. So if you're going to have interstate, you need to have all of those other advantages that come with that, like not having to duplicate every single effort you have in every state.
Doug, what do you feel about interstate commerce?
No, absolutely is necessary. Just along with the federal banking, without the two of them, you just can't really survive an industry. It's just, I mean, they're trying, and like you said, all these big MSOs, they've had tons of money thrown at them, huge investors, and it's just so many things. There are just so many bumps in the road when it comes to the federal banking. Now you can't do that, so you get charged like crazy fees to do anything. You have to use cash. You can't use credit cards. It hurts people. And then when you go across the interstate thing, it's just like you were saying, Josh, these companies, they need to set up one way to do things. They can't just do them this way in New Jersey, the same way in PA, and try to run businesses that way. It's too much overhead is what's happening. They're trying to do it because they want to compete and they want to have the name recognition and they want to be in the industry. But at the end of the day, the business models just aren't set up for people to be lucrative at this point, and it's sad. It really sucks.
I think we may have another guest. Aaron Goins, are you out there?
I'm here.
All right, it's like the voice of God, Aaron. Okay,
That's more
thank you
refuting.
for joining us. Will you please? I know you're having a little issue with your video. That's fine. We miss you, and we welcome you back to the program. You were a regular, really, with David and myself there for a few months. And what's your feeling? I know that you gave me a list of the top 5 stories, and none of them were on my list. So walk me through your predictions and your vision of 2023 in cannabis.
Well, the way I see it, so listen, I had this conversation over a year ago with a number of operators at a industry meeting here in Massachusetts, and I was the only one that brought up inflation and what inflationary headwinds are going to do to the consumer's pocket. And the look on the face of these operators was as if I was introducing a new concept that they never heard of before in their life, which may be in fact true. But I think my number one issue is the greater economic headwinds ahead of us. I mean, CPI is still elevated, it's still very sticky. The comps are going to get better on that year over year, but sequentially, you know, is only down 0.1%, of a point. So, you know, CPI number is going to be here to stay for, I think, at least throughout 2023. What most people aren't even focusing on is the fact that the U.S. personal savings rate dipped to like 2.3% of disposable income, which is something we have not seen since 2005. So if you're an operator and not taking that into effect, that, you know, real wage growth is not keeping up with inflation, the fact that the average consumer is now tapping into reserves, you have to have that on your radar and how you're going to adapt to that. So that's my number one. Number two, extreme pricing wars. We're seeing an ultra competitive, oversaturated municipalities in Massachusetts, such as Brockton. There's a few players in this municipality that have the ability to race to the bottom. The others are just not going to survive, in my opinion. Number three, which is very important, which you guys kind of touched on, is free cash flow from operations. And will it be sufficient enough in order to cover this enormous tax liability associated with 280E that these MSOs are sort of facing? And, you know, if you do a quick sort of analysis on that coverage ratio, Air, Terra Ascend, Columbia, Acreage, Ascend, those are a few off the top of my head who are going to have some difficult times in 2023 in order to be able to cover their tax bill. And there's a number of other ones, but Air is the number one is going to have problems with that. And I think number four, everybody celebrate delivery. But man, I think delivery is dead. And I hate to be that harbinger of death, but listen, I mean, just the model on delivery alone is a higher cost basis than that of a standalone dispensary right there. So you're dealing with, you know, headwinds of gasoline and other aspects of it, but just the customer acquisition is 10 times harder for a delivery operator than it could be for a retailer. And even here in Massachusetts, I now see that one delivery operator has put their business up for sale. They have 5 brand new compliant vehicles, and they have inventory. They want a $3 million price tag, which is a ridiculous valuation. I don't know how much inventory they're having, so I don't know what kind of tangible asset I can attach to that. But the fact of the matter is, you're going to see that go away as well. And lastly, I think counterparty risk is going to explode. I mean, you know, I kind of joked about FTX level, maybe not there, but it's not going to be that far off. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here. You look out west at what's happening in California with a lot of these distributors and the heavy amount of counterparty risk that they're assuming. And at some point, that's going to implode and fold in on itself. So if you're in an eastern state, you really do not have to sit here and guess what's really going to happen, because a lot of this is already occurring on the West Coast. So if you are an operator who actually sits there and pretends that you're shocked, you should not be operating, because you can literally, this is the only industry where you can actually look regionally and see what the hell is going to happen to you in 6 months or a year from now. So I have no sympathy for anybody who is complaining in this environment. And the fact of the matter is, most operators are not forward thinking, and they just do not apply any type of analysis past today and tomorrow.
Rick, I kind of skipped over you. I want to bring you back in here and allow you to reflect on what Mr. Aaron Goins just kind of outlined for us.
Well, I will, but first, as far as interstate commerce goes, remember that right now it's an uneven playing field. The testing standards are not the same in California as they are in Michigan. THC testing policies are not the same in California as they are in Michigan. And you really have 28, 29 different states doing their own thing. So when you talk about interstate commerce, it's going to be a complete mess unless there's some standardization involved, because certainly cannabis that's produced in a state like Mississippi or Missouri may not meet the quality standards that happen here in Michigan. So it will still become a regionalized production scenario. But what Aaron talked about is all very real. I mean, we're looking at some very serious consequences for people who are not paying attention to what's going to come down the pipe. And we talk in Michigan about companies having to get lean and mean, cut staff, cut overhead, allow there to be extra capacity within your system because utilizing your full capacity hasn't returned that investment. But those are lessons people could take right now before the can apocalypse hits your state, and be ready for that, and be market prepared and actually better positioned to withstand that tumult that you know will be happening.
What was that big word? Canatropolis?
Yeah, can apocalypse.
Okay, apocalypse with canna. I get it. David, you and Aaron are cut out of the same mold when it comes to metrics and analyzing numbers. Is he right on?
Aaron and I talk about it regularly, so yeah, I think he is. So, but I want to respond to something Rick said. Rick, what'll happen is cultivators in the Northeast, most of them will go away. You can't grow the product indoors cost effectively and compete with product that's being grown outdoors on the West Coast. And when you consider like 70% of the beer market is the run-of-the-mill swill beer, right? That's going to be the same in cannabis. So you'll have the higher end growers, but with respect to those who are growing, they're just going to decide which markets they want to play in, and they'll make sure their plants will test to those markets, right? California drives emissions in the United States. Why? Because their standards are many times higher than the federal standards, but no car manufacturer wants to not sell in California. So they build their cars to pass California emission standards. You'll see the same thing happening with cannabis. I mean, my prediction was you'll fly out to the West Coast, buy your product, get it lab tested to make certain that it meets your state's requirements. Then you'll fly it back into the state, get it retested locally to show that it does, and then get it entered into your system of record. And I believe that's going to happen. I think it'll be here in 2023. But I'll tell you what, I'd really be interested to hearing from this panel, Jimmy, is what does everybody think what are going to be the big stories that we're going to talk about this time next year?
Ah, that's a good one. Josh, you want to go first on that?
This time next year.
That's a good title for a movie, isn't it? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more states regulating cannabis. I think they're probably past safe banking. There's going to be an incredible amount of consolidation, a lot more cannabis lounge rollouts. All of those things are probably what we're going to be talking about next year.
Hey, Doug, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I think a lot more consolidation. Some of the MSOs, bigger ones, we might be talking about how they are going out, and unfortunately, some of the smaller companies are going to follow as well. But I think that's going to be a big talk for next year. I hope it's the Banking Act passed. That would be amazing.
We want the banking and 280E to go away. That will cure a lot of the ills in the industry, at least in my stupid business brain. Rick, what do you think for next year?
After listening to Morgan talk about the upcoming legislature, I'm uncertain we're going to get anything on a federal level. So I think we'll be talking about regional compacts that exist between states for mutual commerce and transfer of cannabis across lines. That's been discussed for a couple of years. There's been an effort made to try and make it happen. I think somebody finds a way to get that done in 2023, and then that's a game changer for those regional players who have contiguous borders.
And who am I missing? Aaron, you want to talk about 2023? Go ahead.
A massive amount of closures.
Yep.
I believe there's going to be an epic amount of counterparty risk that no one in this industry has fully evaluated, has even quantified, in my opinion. Also, I do believe at this point next year, we're not going to be talking about oversupply. We're going to be talking about demand destruction. Everyone in this industry is always hyper-focused on the supply side of the equation, but no one has yet to try to quantify the demand side of the equation. And when you look at some place like Massachusetts, for example, we have an oversupply that's going to exacerbate now that Rhode Island and Connecticut and soon to be New York are coming on board. That demand, the real demand in Massachusetts is significantly lower than what the sales figures show. So if you think that as an operator now, you might be okay, give it a few more months once Rhode Island residents start buying more in Rhode Island and Connecticut, in Connecticut. That demand is not as big as what we think it really is. And I think the Treasury is going to be very shocked. And I think a lot of operators are going to be very shocked as well. And you're going to see a massive amount of closures, and you're going to see the rise of the distressed asset class.
David, you're already saying, yep.
Well, here's what I think the big stories are going to be. There's going to be several MSOs that are going to go out of business. They're just going to tip over and they're not going to be able to make it. I think the precipitating event is going to be interstate commerce. I think it's going to be more than just regional packs. I think that and I don't even think we're going to need regional packs. I think it's just going to be what's going on with Jefferson Packing House. I'm about to file a petition with the Mass Cannabis Control Commission, pushing them to have some sort of provision in the regulations to provide for interstate commerce. How do you buy from an out-of-state supplier, and how do you sell to somebody out of state? And if they say no, all it's going to take is somebody to sue the commission. All you need to do is take the Jefferson Packing House suit and change a few names on it and file it in Boston. I think there'll be a number of players, even small players, that are going to go out by April or May. The big thing everybody's going to be talking about, instead of like interstate commerce and ATM machines, is going to be restructuring. You're going to see a tremendous amount of restructuring because cannabis firms cannot avail themselves of bankruptcy. And when you start to look at these cultivation facilities, right? Somebody who owns a cultivation facility, if they run into a problem and they can't pay their mortgage on it because the person they're leasing it to can't pay the bill, they can't go into bankruptcy either because their revenue stream is coming from a drug trafficker, and a bankruptcy judge will say, I can't confirm a plan for you. So we're going to be talking a tremendous amount of restructuring, which is what Aaron's talking about with people going out of business. And I think you're going to see that the wind is going to be let out of the New Jersey and New York markets when all of a sudden they can buy product in Massachusetts. They're not going to get the same crazy run up that we had in Massachusetts that lasted for so long. Right.
Cost per pound. Go ahead.
I was in a dispensary 2 weeks ago, Jimmy. They had to go to the back room 3 times to get me 2/8 that were lab tested no later than September. The first one they brought out was lab tested in March and packaged in September. The other 2 they got were lab tested in September, packaged in November. That's not too bad, but you talk to legacy folks, they'll tell you the product is after about 8 to 10 weeks, it begins to degrade, loses its potency. And I hear stories all the time about product that has been tested 8 months ago, 9 months ago, sometimes a year ago.
It's called demand side issues. That's what that's called. There's not enough pull through. So you have no inventory turn. So it's going to sit there and be stale. But I also just want to piggyback real quick on what David said, interesting about interstate commerce. I know that we see this as a holy grail of everything that's going to happen. We also have to understand that cannabis lacks a lot of knowledge from other industries. Right now, I'm in the supply chain side of the industry right now, not cannabis, but outside of it, just because I think that's where the new opportunity is going to lie. Once you have federal legalization. Just because blue sky laws collapse and we can now do interstate commerce does not mean that cannabis industry even has the knowledge for procurement, for transport, to go through the entire supply chain, materials movement, and all the way down to your production floor. I'm saying this because I understand these elements. If you don't actually understand how to manage your supply chain, which there is no knowledge in this space right now, it is going to cost you a fortune to get product from California to Massachusetts, just because you don't have the years and years of knowledge that other industries already have in that space. Industries are throwing an insane amount of money at the supply chain right now after what they've seen over the past couple of years. And cannabis is so behind the curve on that, so behind. So interstate commerce would be great, but if you don't have the talent in there to get it to you cheaply, you can double your price at what you paid for that commodity just to get it over here to Massachusetts.
I look at the security issues of it, and
Yeah, you're right.
just such a high risk and liability that it's just going to cost a fortune. You're going to need to hire security teams just to travel with it, because if not, it's just going to be constantly missing. Somebody's going to be taking something.
And I don't see this industry actually getting to the size that it could ever get in the absence of a clearinghouse. When I used to be a derivatives trader, and any trade that I'm doing, whether on one side of it and somebody's taking the other side of it, you have something in the middle called OCC, or Options Clearing Corporation. They take away that counterparty risk. So if the other side of my trade falls down, they're going to step in and make that trade whole. We don't have that in cannabis. So even with interstate commerce, there's still going to be massive amounts of counterparty risk. And until you remove that counterparty risk, there's always going to be that premium multiple that you're going to place on anything that you do in cannabis. That's the number one risk that has to get removed in this industry. If somebody's going to be smart enough to set up a clearinghouse that's going to take the other side of the trade, whoever does that is going to make a fortune in this industry.
And everybody's trying to make a fortune in this industry, but I don't know. Have people made money if you got in early at this point, guys, and then got out?
Mergers and acquisitions are all about making money. Oftentimes people cash out right now because they can see what's coming up.
Doug, you and I have talked about this privately. Recession, depression on the horizon here in the United States, and impact on the cannabis industry?
Well, I keep saying we're in a recession. You can't change the definition. So we're absolutely in a recession, and we're heading straight for a depression. And as I mentioned earlier, I mean, Goldman Sachs is laying people off, everyone in the cannabis industry, but every sector across the board is about to see major layoffs in 2023. And it's going to get ugly. I mean, we should see one last run in the stock market. Things should pop one more time. They've been trying, and they can't even do that. They should have ran for the last 3 weeks, and they still can't. So I'm interested to see what the new year will bring if we do get a quick run. But yeah, I'm not expecting a whole lot of economic
Recovery.
Yeah, anything positive in 2023. Let's put it that way.
All right. Hey, Josh, you wanted to add something there because you agree with Doug at this point on the recession and depression thing, huh?
No, I was just rooting him on because you can't change it's 2 quarters of negative GDP that makes a recession. A depression is 6 quarters, and you can't change that no matter how hard you want to. So we're already there, and that
Summer
price
2022, it went in. It literally went into a recession, and they tried to change the definition. You can't change the definition. And as I always say, I'm a big chart person. Charts don't lie. They just do not lie. They'll get manipulated, but they never lie.
That's why we had Josh's charts at the beginning of this show. We do have 2 very special new people that just joined us. And one has been a regular viewer of this show, constantly in the chat room. All right. And the other is a guy in Illinois who covers the Illinois scene, but he's also been a very successful podcaster, attorney, and is building a new place. I think he's building a new office for himself. His name's Thomas Howard. Hi, Thomas. How are you?
Hi, reporting from a bunker. Guys, how are you? Yeah, thanks for having me on the podcast.
Oh, no. This is great. And, it's really a thank you to everybody for committing to this and coming in on a Friday afternoon, week before Christmas and New Year's, of course. And Miggy also he's the answer to a trivia question. And I'm not sure. Let me think. Did anybody here no, I don't know if they'll know this. But when we went to MJ BizCon in 19, I'm pretty sure it was, we rented out, or we had access to a call-in live studio, and Miggy, I'm pretty sure, was the first caller that we were able to take live in this show, and that's something I will never ever forget.
What's up?
Mick, how you doing, man?
I'm surrounded by all kinds of greats. What's up, dudes?
That's right. Great to see you. Great to see you.
Yeah. Cheers.
And I asked the doctor, leave me alone, to join us too, but I have not seen him. He has not communicated with me, so it's difficult to get him a Zoom link. I definitely want to get both of yours opinions on what we've been talking about: interstate commerce, recession, the implosion, market correction, all those neat things that we have been talking about in the cannabis industry. But I want to take our 30-minute break now, and then come back for a full 30. And you guys, we'll start with you right off the bat. So don't go away. We'll continue with Green Rush Live after this.
With that, we're going to roll this one up. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is The Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out. Don't forget to smash that like button on your way out and check out these other videos that we've got.